Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of The Amazing Spider-Man. This movie is directed by Marc Webb, who previously directed 500 Days of Summer, and this movie stars Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Rhys Ifans, and Sally Field, with Martin Sheen and Denis Leary. Now, when I first heard they were making another Spider-Man movie, I got really excited because I was like, great, they're going to make a good fourth movie to make up for the garbage that was Spider-Man 3. And then I found out it was going to be a reboot. And then I found out he was going to play Spider-Man. And then I found out about this whole untold story. But then I found out who the rest of the actors were going to be in it. And I was like, okay, it's going to be darker. I'll give it a shot. Now, the plot of this Spider-Man reboot is much like the very first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, where it introduces Peter Parker, his Aunt May, his Uncle Ben, and even how he gets his amazing powers. You could pretty much take out the Green Goblin in the first movie and insert the Lizard. Now, this movie is different in the sense that it is darker and it's more emotional. Whenever characters get sad or upset or angry, you can really feel for them. Now, this movie sticks closer to Spider-Man's comic book origins, where instead of him about to graduate high school and go off to college, he's firmly still in high school. And instead of Mary Jane, we have Peter Parker's first love interest, Gwen Stacy. Now, this movie even threw in the whole untold story of Peter's parents, but I'll get to that a little later. That was just the main draw and the main hook to get people to see this movie. Now, if I had to compare this to the original Spider-Man movies, you know, the classics, if the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was, let's say, Batman Forever, this Spider-Man movie would be more like Batman Begins. Now, Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker worked. He wasn't as wimpy and he wasn't as awkward as Tobey Maguire was. He was a lot like Clark Kent in Superman, where he was stumbling over his words and he was nervous and he was fidgety, and it worked. His chemistry with Emma Stone worked fine. Now, as Spider-Man, people are going to say, oh, he was really witty against the bad guys and he would get into their heads and he was hilarious. Honestly, the best part of him as Spider-Man, as far as his wit goes, was in the trailer. When he's interacting with the car thief and the guy pulls out the knife, that was his best line as Spider-Man. Because when he's swinging around and when he's fighting the bad guys, because he moves so quick and because most of that, I'm sure, is CGI, it all looked the same to me. I really couldn't distinguish him as Spider-Man from Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, besides the way the costume looked, which, by the way, if he were to stand still and you were to actually look at the costume, it looks ridiculous, but because he's moving so fast, you can hardly notice it. Not a big deal. Now, as far as him making the suit, he used more of a Batman Begins type of approach than Tobey Maguire did in his movies. Now, on to Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. She was tougher than Mary Jane. She was more emotional as Mary Jane. And when I say that, I mean you could actually tell what she was thinking and how she was feeling instead of her just being awkwardly silent. Rhys Ifans as Dr. Curt Connors, a.k.a. the Lizard. As Curt Connors, he worked. I would have really wanted him to be more of like Peter Parker's instructor or teacher or professor, but he worked for Oscorp in this movie, so it was different. It was okay. Now, as the Lizard, I really didn't like him as the Lizard for two reasons. One, because the Lizard looks way too much like one of the Koopas from the Mario Brothers movie. That, and whenever the Lizard would speak, guess who he'd sound like? He would sound just like Dr. Curt Connors. He wouldn't sound all like a lizard or a creature. He would sound human, and that really took away from the scariness and the believability of him being transformed. Now on to Denis Leary as Gwen Stacy's father, Police Captain Stacy. I'm glad they didn't choose an older actor like James Cromwell to play that role. Instead, they chose Denis Leary. It's funny, they did away with Willem Dafoe in Spider-Man, but they brought in an actor that looks like Willem Dafoe. Anyways, Denis Leary was pretty good. This was a different role for him. He was like a serious New York cop. I mean, go figure with what he's done with Rescue Me, but he did a good job. Sally Field is Aunt May. I was a little put off by how young this Aunt May was because I was used to Aunt May in the Spider-Man cartoon show as well as Aunt May in the Spider-Man trilogy, so I was expecting her to be older, but then I realized if she's supposed to be Peter Parker's aunt, his mom's sister, okay, her age is appropriate. Martin Sheen is Uncle Ben. I guess they needed an actor to speak more lines, and I guess they wanted a, I don't want to say better actor than Cliff Robertson, but another older actor, so they brought in Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen was good in this. Martin Sheen's good in everything, so he did a good job. And then we have some smaller roles from, as far as the whole untold story goes with Peter and his parents. This is what I wanted it to be. I wanted what happened to his parents to be some accident or some occurrence or some event that Peter would eventually discover that would help cause him to be determined and be courageous and help him become Spider-Man, along with the Uncle Ben situation. I wanted to be totally unrelated and irrelevant to what happens after he becomes Spider-Man. But instead, we get this hardly mentioned plot. We get this cheap ploy to introduce Dr. Kurt Connors, the villain. Is the best way to describe it. In the first Batman movie, Bruce Wayne's parents get killed by a random mugger that causes him to become Batman. Well, in the first movie, his parents get killed by the Joker before he was the Joker, and then later when he's fighting the Joker, he finds out that it was in fact the Joker, and it ties that together. I didn't like that. That's how this movie was. I'm not saying Kurt Connors killed his parents. This was just some way of going, hey, my parents died. Oh, they worked with this guy. Oh, okay, this is the villain. I didn't like how that tied together. Granted, there is a scene after the credits that makes you question things, and hopefully they'll answer in the second movie and even in the third movie. But because that was a real letdown, The Amazing Spider-Man overall was more like a little bit above average Spider-Man. So if we're rating it 1 to a 5, this movie's getting a 3.5. It's a fun action movie. Go take your kids or your friends. I honestly just can't wait for Batman. So that's what I'm hoping for. So, till next time, guys. See ya. Also, since I heard this is going to be the start of a new trilogy, what I would like to see in this trilogy is the second movie. I would like them to introduce more of Norman Osborn, as well as Harry Osborn and Jonah Jameson. Now, for you comic book fans, if they introduce Norman Osborn, if he becomes the Green Goblin, you know what that means for Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane. Now, I would not like them to have this movie kind of mentioning Norman Osborn, second movie mentioning him even more, and then the third movie finally showing him. I don't want that. I want this first movie to not be the iconic villain like they did with the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. I like how they waited to introduce the Joker in the second film. So do the Lizard, Green Goblin, and then pull out all the stops and introduce Venom the right way, or Carnage, or Kraven, or Mysterio, or maybe even Dr. Octopus, and make them good action movies. Make them blow the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films out of the water. That's what I would like to see. So, there are my thoughts there. Let me know what you guys think. Did you see Spider-Man? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What do you want to see in the new trilogy? Let me know. See ya.